You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast.
Today, you'll hear a conversation with Michelle and one of our Love Over Addiction sisters. As always, we want to remind you that we don't do judgment in this community. We accept all of our sisters just as they are, without regard to background, religious beliefs, or their specific situation or partner. Please open your heart and make space for her and her story. And one other quick thing before we dive in. If you haven't already heard, we're doing a free program sample of our Love Over Addiction online program. You can learn more and get your free sample by going to loveoveraddiction.com/December. Enjoy the show.
First of all, I want to start off by saying thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me. I know this takes courage, and I am so grateful that you trusted me enough to share your story. I know it's going to inspire many people.
I'm happy to do it.
Good. Okay, so where I love to start is, how did you meet your husband, and when did you start to notice something might be going on? He might be having an issue with his drinking or whatever other issues he might have in his life going on.
Oh man. I met my husband when I was 13. We started dating when I was 16, and pretty shortly after we started dating, he went to rehab for the first time. He had attempted to steal a doctor's prescription pad, and here I am, the good little girl who did theater and sang, and I was like, what have I done?
Mm-hmm.
But I was a bit just completely smitten with his personality. He was so smart, and I wasn't running. He was trying to get better in my head, and it was, so really it was, he was supposed to pick me up at school or something, and sent his parents instead because he was going to rehab. So.
Wow. So what age was that when he went to rehab?
Well, let's see. I was 16, so he was 19, 20.
Okay. So you were in high school, and was he attending college?
No, he is a musician, so he had just come back from Chicago, well, outside Chicago, after a failed attempt at a band with a friend. So
okay. So he was an older guy, and he went to rehab. So when his parents picked you up, they must have known what was going on with their son. What kind of parents were they, or are they?
That's completely, they were complete enablers. They're so very sweet. His mom was just trying to do what was best for her son. Same with his dad. But there have been, issues along the way where I've told them, please don't let him drive your car home. He's not well, and that sort of thing. And they trusted their son over me, which is fine. I understand that, because I would say for a very, very long time, would use, and most people would have no idea he was under the influence of anything. No idea.
So he does a very good job of covering it up.
Yes. Well, for a long time he did. He lost control of that as well. But pretty much everything and anything. At that point, his big thing, he wasn't a drinker at that time. So at that point, it was prescription Klonopin. That was that was at that time. But there have been many other substances since, including methadone and chlorocidin and heroin and crack cocaine. And
Wow. Wow. That's huge. So do you feel like he's just one drug has turned into another, but it sounds like the drugs you mentioned are getting worse and cheaper. I mean,
well,
prescription drugs, did you see that natural progression, or why the variety, do you think?
His father, both of his parents actually were English professors, and his father focused mainly on the beat poets. And, one of the things that the beat poets did were, they tried a lot of drugs and then wrote about it. So my husband, being a writer and a musician, wanted to try all the drugs so that he would know what they were and experience that for himself.
Wow.
I think it was sort of a social experiment, really. He says that I believe still to this day that he says that the only thing he hasn't tried is ecstasy. But he was a strange user in that he would go overboard for maybe a week or 2 weeks with crack, and then he'd be done, and he'd be like, I'm going to go to rehab because I've gotten myself hooked to crack. And then he wouldn't do crack again, and then he would try something else, maybe a year later, 2 years later, something like that.
So, okay, we've talked a lot about him, which is great because we need to get a good foundation for what was going on. But what about you during all of this? How did you feel the first time he went to rehab and his parents came to pick you up?
Oh, I was hopeful, actually. I thought, okay, well, he's working on himself and he's trying to get better, and he's got a disease and that sort of thing. And I think I've since come to not necessarily question the disease aspect of addiction, which, I'm a medical professional. I can see that it has disease aspects and disease qualities. I just question how we're treating it and telling a diabetic, you have diabetes and you're powerless against it, and you can go away and you can get treatment, but only 30% of the time it's successful. So you're probably not going to succeed, and this is probably going to kill you. You don't really have a good, strong, a stronghold to fight it, because the only thing they're telling you is you're not going to survive.
This is fascinating. I want to park here for a moment because you're in the medical profession and because I think this is such a hot topic, disease versus not disease, self-control versus not self-control. And I think you mentioned a really great point, which is the recovery rate. So in your opinion, professionally and personally, how would you approach this?
Well, I've been doing some research on there's a place called St. Jude's Retreat that I'm fascinated by. I'm kind of delving into this idea that we need to provide therapies that are choice-based, and you have a choice. And if you drink one beer, you probably don't have to drink 30. And, if you make a mistake, you slip up, you have one beer. I mean, that's kind of the mantra of, every rehab and every, family program that I've been through is, if they have one beer, they'll have 30. If they have one beer, they'll have 50, and I think that we need to pull that back a little bit and say, there might be slip-ups along the way, but you don't have to let it end you. You have to keep going and pushing forward and working whatever program is going to work for you. So I find that concept very interesting.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's many different options, and from my experience, I think it's completely individual. So when I see the variety that you're talking about with different programs, I think because one man or one woman failed in one program, let's say AA, that does not necessarily mean that there's not another program out there for them that would work. But the goal, like you said, is to keep trying different things. It's not a one-size-fits-all. What's the theory for my best friend is married to a man who is a recovering alcoholic who still drinks occasionally. And he slips up, but there's been multiple times where he's been able to have one or two beers and ended at that. Is that right for everybody? I don't know. But I know from them they have a very successful marriage, and he is a extremely wonderful guy who runs his own business and is just one of the best dads I've ever seen. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting insight that you bring. I choose specifically not to get too inundated with that kind of research, just in our community, because I find that there are so many people out there doing that kind of research that I'm going to let them carry on with that. And I think our community is more researching about the friends and family and what can we do in our own rehab.
Well,
Does
I think that's really what brought me to it, honestly, is that, I found a very positive community in LOA. I found a very loving and accepting, and no matter what stage you're in, if you're going to leave someone, if you're going to stay, if you're not sure, we're all cheering each other on instead of saying, you're going to fail. And so
absolutely.
That really resonated with me, and I, started to think about it and, thinking, oh my gosh, I've worked my butt off trying to get him where he might need to be, and now I'm focused on me, which is wonderful. But all this time I'm sending him to this rehab or that rehab, and he comes back saying, I'm going to fail. I'm a failure. And
wow.
I think that for me, I believe in the power of positive thinking. I believe in the secret. I believe in all of those things. And why are we not treating addiction in the same fashion, maybe with some modifications for sure, but, let's not be so negative, so harsh.
Let me just tell you, what you are speaking to, I would give you, I am, yes and yes, big, doing a cheerleading move, YES for you, because I think what you're saying is so true. That was one of the main things when my husband was addicted to drugs and alcohol. I felt like everywhere I went, it was so down in the dumps. I left some meetings more depressed than when I came into them.
Right,
and
absolutely.
I was just like, there has got to be a better way. And there's got to be this whole, I didn't want every website I pulled up. I saw, the person standing on the mountaintop with the hands raised in the air, or, and I'm like, I don't do that, and I'm not looking to do that.
I don't know anybody who does that. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
I mean, how many people have gone on top of mountaintops and raised their hands? I'm not sure. I've never met one before. So where are all these pictures coming from? But anyways, I'm
going to do that. I'm going to post a picture. You're going to see it. It's happening.
I should. That would be really funny. But I think what you're saying is so true, though. It's that's a kind of a cheesy version of what addiction tries to tell us joy looks like, freedom looks like. And there was a missing layer there where I think it was just like, what does positivity and encouragement and forgiveness and grace look like in reality when you're dealing with addiction? It doesn't all need to be doom and gloom or some cheesy stock photo. It can be real, and it can be, like you said, I absolutely believe in the power of positive thinking. Wholeheartedly, it changed my life. And along with other things, but that was one of the main ingredients. And you're right. What if we approached the actual men and women who are suffering with addiction with the same techniques that we are learning in this program? I think it would be, revolutionary. I think it would be a whole new approach that the world of addiction has not, tried yet, that I've found.
Of course it's about choices, but it's also about you're gonna slip up, and that doesn't mean you failed. And just because there's only a 30% success rate for rehabilitation, maybe that's because the rehabilitation that we're doing is, maybe we're on the wrong track. Maybe we need to not, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think as women, it's a fine line, right? Because you have to watch yourself. At least I had to watch myself. I used to give this speech to therapists, and it was the 7 greatest mistakes that women make, and then it was also the 7 greatest mistakes therapists make when treating people with alcoholism or addiction or the loved ones. And one of the mistakes was if you're treating somebody with a family member, not to encourage them to Google too much, because Google can be a never-ending trap, and you can go down the path of, I'm just going to check something out to see if this might be helpful to them, to then that, for me at least, it became, 3 months worth of research on trying to find the great solution for him. And I really had to pull myself back and go, okay, how much am I giving the attention to his disease and how it affects him versus how the disease is affecting me? And so I had to walk, there's a fine line there. You have to let them figure out their own recovery in one way as you figure out your own.
Right.
Did you have that balance?
This latest time, I think through our program and what I've learned, he got a DUI. My son was in the car. It was a horrifying experience. And I thought, oh my gosh, and of course, all of those same codependent behaviors, well, we've got to get them to rehab. And I kind of changed that because, I sent him to the Scientology rehab, probably 4 years ago. And immediately he came out and started drinking. And so I said, if you want to go to rehab, you'll figure it out. If you want to get treatment, you'll figure it out. If you want to just choose the right path, you'll figure it out. But if you don't, I'm not here. I can't be here. And
did you mean that when you said that?
I absolutely did. I absolutely did, and I still do. I had a trip planned, a solo trip, my first solo trip to go see my sister. Trying to do some self-care and just get away for a minute. And he was going to be here with the kids, and I was not realizing quite, I guess, how bad it was, or was in denial. And so May 13th was when I was supposed to fly out to see my sister. And I had to, lose the money for the plane ticket, and I talked to my dad, and my sweet father flew from St. Louis, Missouri. Me and I took my kids out of school, and I went to St. Louis, and my sister came and visited me there, and I was gone for maybe a week and a half. He had no car, just in the house. I made sure he had food and water, food for the animals, and I left. And I was gone for a little over a week, and then my dad and I drove the 26, 27 hours back.
How did that feel to be gone for that long?
Well, I talked to him every day, and every day I could hear in his voice he was a little better and coming down off of all of the things that he was doing, and a little clearer, we all know the story. We've all been there.
Yes, we have.
Where you're like, they're back. But for me, this time is different. This time I'm not like, oh, he's back. I'm just going to appreciate it for however long I have it. There's still just so much trepidation and hurt and fear that I'm dealing with. But we're a couple months in, and things are way better. But he lost his license. Has he been sober
since then?
Yes. Well, he doesn't really have a choice, so that's the fear. I'm kind of taking this time to mentally, prepare myself for when he does get his license back and he is out in the world. Because right now, if he goes out with me. And actually, he's in Pennsylvania right now with his dad, visiting his dad, which is fine because they kind of know the situation as well. And I think that he's not gonna. But if he does, I'm not going to know about it, so I'm not going to worry about it. I can't live in the what ifs of his trip to Pennsylvania. But this is the first time that he's been gone since he lost his license. That he's not been here at the house or, a random trip to the grocery store or walking around the mall with the kids or whatever. It's been very family focused and very, just healing for now.
So you feel, because a lot of times I think when our husbands get sober or our loved ones become sober for a certain period of time, we put all our eggs in one basket. We feel extremely worried about, it can almost cause more anxiety when they're sober than when they're drinking, because at least when they're drinking, okay, I've done this. It's happened. The air's out of the balloon. The chaos is going on. Whereas when they're sober, it's like this panic mode where you're waiting for the chaos to come. You're just walking on eggshells. And which is sad because that shows you how sick we've become, where we're more comfortable with chaos than we are with peace. Right? That's the measurable.
Absolutely. I kind of really relate. There's a Tori Amos song where she says, "I'm okay when everything's not okay." And that is a very relatable line, I think, to even though we're not okay at all. We're way more okay when the scary stuff is going on than we are when, there's that eerie calm because you're waiting for the storm.
Yeah. And so the way you can tell how far along you are in your recovery, or one of the ways, is your reaction when he's not drinking. If you've successfully detached from this situation, and a lot of people hate that word detached because they feel like it means you're saying you don't love him. Well, I love my ex-husband, but I've completely detached from him. I'm not angry at him. I'm not resentful of him. it just means their behavior doesn't affect your emotions one way or your other. If you're happy when they walk through the door and you see that they're drunk, you can actually remain happy. That's what detached means. So one of the measurables to see how far along we are in our recovery is to see in the peaceful moments, if we are able to maintain our peace, in the sober moments, if we were able to maintain our peace, then we know we've successfully detached. So how have you been the last couple of months with the sobriety? Can you say you're working on continuing to be okay, or would you say you have these anxious moments and you have to walk yourself out of them?
Well, I am, trying to really focus on myself during this time, and also rebuilding what he and I have that was lost. And I don't believe that there will ever be a full trust ever, and I'm okay with that. But right now, it's hard to say because, there is very, very little freedom right now for him to go out and do anything. I guess, yeah, he could always, take the car when I'm sleeping. I'm a night shift nurse, so he could always, take the car and go somewhere and, buy alcohol or whatever it is that he's going to do. But I don't find myself dwelling on it. I think the real test is going to be when he has a license and is able to, go and do, and I'm just going to try and be patient with myself because I don't know how that's all going to go. But, I think, we have a fairly, even when he was way using, we still communicated fairly well for the most part. So I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to look like when he has that freedom back. It's not that I'm, the jail keeper or anything like that. He just doesn't have a license and I won't let him drive my car.
Which is a really healthy boundary, and I'm very proud of you for making that. Because a lot of women would give in and feel guilty or feel, like the bad guy. So that's a really great boundary. How old is your son who was in the car with him when he got his DUI?
He's 4.
So
yeah.
Did he understand what was going on with Daddy, or did he ask you any questions about it?
Well, that was very, I was supposed to work that night, and I ended up having to call off work because I had, bought a breathalyzer because, at his, we had sort of talked about it, and he had said, if it would make you feel better to prove to you that I'm not drinking, we can do that. And I was thinking about it and thought, you know what, sometimes that would help me just sleep because I have to sleep during the day and I was losing sleep and, had to work all night on no sleep and, it just gets very maddening. So I bought the breathalyzer and he was don't really think, I was saying to myself, I don't really think I need to be breathalyzing you every day, but I will breathalyze you when I feel like something's up. And, he was fine with that too. And that particular day, he was not okay, and I knew right away that he was not okay. And so I said, okay, well, we need to, I want you to breathalyze. And he said, no. And I said, well, then I'll just assume that you've been drinking, and that's fine, but I have to go to sleep because I have to work, and a fight ensued, and he did end up breathalyzing and blew up .13. And I said, I've got to go to sleep. I've got to work tonight. You know, I'm the only one who works, and we have 4 kids. And I said, I've got to go to sleep. I've got to go to work tonight. I'm not going to fight with you about this. You know what you did was wrong, and that's all I'm going to say. And I laid down in our back bedroom, and I heard my son screaming. And I heard the car door and looked out the window of the back bedroom and saw my car driving away. And I ran out and started screaming for my son, just frantic, and texted him immediately and said, if you don't come back, I'm calling the police. And I waited for maybe 60 seconds. Was not going to wait long for that text. I waited for maybe 60 seconds, and it really honestly felt like hours, and called the police and made a report. And then I called work sobbing and said, I can't come in, there's been an emergency. Because I knew even if he came back, I would be in no shape to go into work. And about 45 to 50 minutes later, the police called me and said, you need to come pick up your son and your car because your husband has been arrested for DUI. And I said, that's my car. That's my only car. And they said, okay, we'll pick you up. And the officer showed up, and I was sobbing, and he was like, what's wrong? And I said, he blew a .13, and the officer was like, what are you talking about? And then I had to explain that I had a breathalyzer, and he said, you know, I know this about him, and I had a breathalyzer. And he said to me, why didn't you call the police? And I went, what? I thought you caught him because I called the police.
Yeah.
He said, you called the police? I said, yes, I absolutely called the police. About 60 seconds after I realized he left, I called the police. So he said, well, I haven't gotten anything over the radio. So I get in the back of the car, the cop car, and he's driving me there. And at this point, it's maybe an hour after he took my son, and that's when they said, we're looking for you know, my vehicle, and you know, father and son, and the father's been drinking, and you know, I heard it come over the radio. So the officer called back, we already have him, I have the mom in the car, we're on our way to the scene. So then I get to the scene, have to repeat the story again, and I can't stay long because my 2 boys are going to get off a school bus like any minute, and I said, okay, I really have to go. And I put Jude in the car, and I'm driving home in tears. The cop wasn't sure if I should drive home. And I'm driving home, and I get there as my boys are there, and, you know, of course, the first thing they say is, where's Dad? And I had to tell them my daughter was on a school trip. She was up in the mountains with her choir, and she was on a school trip, and my 11-year-old son texted her, and I had not even thought of that as a possibility, that my 11-year-old son would text my teenage daughter and say, Dad's in jail. My processing did not go that far that day. And I said, well, maybe it's okay because she's not really getting any texts because she's in the mountains and there's not real good reception. So when I was getting ready to pick her up, I got a text saying, Mom, what's going on? And I said, well, can I call you? And I called her, and she said that she had gotten the text as she was coming down the mountain. All of the texts were coming in. She said, is Dad in jail? And she was crying, and she said, yeah, I got the text. I started crying. Someone said, "What's wrong?" Saw the text on my phone and announced it to the bus that Dad was in jail.
Wow.
So it was
Nice.
a very rough and kind of traumatic experience for everybody, and they didn't let him out until like midnight.
So
Two
did
days
you
later.
Did you
No,
post bond?
no, I refused.
Good
They
for
just let him out.
you. Good for you. Well done.
Um,
That's huge. But how did he get out?
They let him out because it was his first offense.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
20 years of using, and it was his first offense. Like I said, he was a pro.
Yeah.
But they did
So
let him out.
how did you handle that with your children? Because, the 4-year-old, I don't, I have a 6-year-old, so I know what a 4-year-old can handle and what a 4-year-old can notice, but particularly the older kids and the shame and embarrassment that your daughter must have felt on that bus. That's a lot to work through. How have you, as a mom,
Well, my daughter is, we've always been very honest with all the kids. Not so much the 4-year-old, he's a little too young, but the 3 older ones for sure. I've been very honest with, and it's been problematic for my husband at times, and he's not been happy about it. The kids were saving money for a trip to Disney World, and we had the jar on the counter, and the money just kept going missing, and he was taking the money to buy beer, and I told him, Dad took the money to buy beer. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay as long as I can, but I'm just letting you know that I don't know if we can keep going this way. And so for, and we talked to them about, we have lots of addicts in the family, and, if you use drugs, it's not very smart because we have addicts in the family, and that makes you more susceptible to addiction and that sort of thing, just hoping for them not to go through what my husband is going through, and certainly not what I have gone through in dealing with it. But that...
No, I was just going to say, you are handling that beautifully, perfectly, textbook parenting right there. That is exactly what you want to be doing with your kids, is every step of the way almost overly communicating. I mean, I know my kids got so sick of me asking how they feel about things and explaining things to them. They just started rolling their eyes because they knew I was going to talk to them about it. But I think it's so important because kids know that something's going on. They know when mom is unhappy. They know when dad is being irresponsible. They know when their money's missing, that they didn't take it, so where else would it have gone? And when there's no communication and there's no answers to help them explain their feelings, they run the risk of thinking it's their fault or suppressing their own feelings. So what you're doing is you're giving them permission to feel however they want to respond to it. And it's not to say that, by communicating with your kids, it's going to take away their anger or their sadness or their denial, which are all very real responses with children who have parents with alcoholics and addicts. But you are giving them permission to give those feelings words and space, and that's when the healing comes, and that's when you begin to change the next generation. That you begin to introduce new patterns and new ways of coping with feelings that your husband probably doesn't know yet or understand how to do. So I commend you tremendously for choosing to explain to your kids what's going on and not throwing him under the bus. I mean, you're not sitting there calling him a bad name. You're just saying, look, the money's gone from the jar. This is a fact. It's the truth. And you need to know that. And that's great. And I understand, a lot of women say, well, what is my husband going to say? He's going to get so mad if he hears that I talk to my kids about this. And to that, I say tough the hooties. I wouldn't have to have these conversations if you were not suffering or making these poor choices. So I'm going to choose to have these conversations with my kids over and over and over again over worrying about how you're going to react to that. So well done. I think it's phenomenal parenting on your part.
They all react differently. My son is very, very close to his dad, and he has a very hard time accepting that there's a problem, accepting that, and I think sometimes that openness can be, he's my dear son is he's so smart but very opinionated, and he had a very hard time being accepting of, the reality of the situation, and would, he was starting to kind of lie for his dad a little bit and kind of, and that sort of thing. And I think that that's probably what concerned me most and what really said, okay, I gotta find a better way, or I gotta get out of here, because I can't have a child go through this. I can't have a child who's an addict, and I don't want a child who's married to an addict. That would be just awful to me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's just a scary thing, because the statistics are not great. And so, I'm arming them, I think, with as much information and my husband does too. He's very good at that, as far as, most of the time, I'll say. As far as, explaining to them, don't do what I do. Don't do what I do. Don't do this, because I do this, you have a higher chance of doing this, but don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. So, I'm hoping that will help. My daughter has a better sense of humor about everything, and she had been dating a boy or something, and his father worked at the jail, and she laughed and told me, I wonder if he knows Dad. So, okay.
That's super healthy. That's really healthy too. I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday about, we have to have humor with this. If we don't laugh about this at some point, I mean, it's just, we've got to. So that's wonderful that your daughter is finding humor in it. That's a healthy reaction. And as far as your older son, I had an older son. I do have an older son, but my oldest son, he was very protective of his father too, very protective, and didn't really accept the level of severity of what was going on. And I left because I, like you, felt like I can't keep my kids around this. Like, I just refuse. I'm not going to raise them in a household that has to deal with this kind of chaos and dysfunction. So I left, and I was worried about how my older son would react. I thought he'd be very loyal to his dad, so I thought he'd be very, very angry with me. And the truth is, he was for a while. He didn't understand. But as the years went on and he saw how this disease progressed and got worse, he realized I did the right thing. And now, almost every day, he thanks me for leaving.
It's such a a hard line to cross when you have a child who's just so fiercely loyal. And I mean, I think that now, that there's a harmony and a peace in the house, he is able to see the difference and go, oh. And I don't know that he'll ever admit that he was wrong about it, but I think that, I think he definitely sees a difference in how the family as a whole communicates, now that we have a sober dad as opposed to a using dad.
Yeah.
So,
And I also think it's also important to notice that, you're the mom and he's the child. And a lot of times we as mom kind of get sometimes too invested in the opinions of our kids and let that kind of direct our decisions. But ultimately, what's best for him. It's not his job. He hasn't lived long enough of a life to understand what's best, but you have that wisdom that he doesn't yet, and to trust that wisdom, no matter what it is. If you decide to leave or you decide to stay, but just knowing that you are wise enough to be able to make adult decisions for your dependents and to go with that, no matter what their reactions are.
right. And I was very prepared to go at that time. I own my house. I own all the things in it. I have dogs and cats and, a life here and a job here. And I was prepared to leave everything, let the house go, bankruptcy, whatever. I was, those were the decisions that I was really facing. I don't, I don't know that necessarily my house would sell. I don't know, and I didn't know any of the answers to those questions. I just, at that period of time, if there was no change, sometimes you think, oh my God, why did this happen? But for me, the DUI, although traumatic, was a wonderful thing that needed to happen. I think that at that point, God was saying, dude, what are you doing? You've got to make a change, something. And, no, I haven't left, because I didn't need to. During this period, he's sober and things are okay. But I still have that God voice in me saying, but if you need to, now that you're strong enough.
That's huge. That's absolutely perfect. That's exactly where you want to be. You reserve the right, you're choosing to stay today, and you reserve the right to change your mind tomorrow. That is the ultimate place to be. Really.
And I love it. I love this place. This is a good place.
This is great.
This is a great place. And of course my family all knows and everybody knows what I'm going through, and, everybody loves my husband. Everybody thinks that he's wonderful, and he is. He really, really is when he's sober. And so I think that, people who know exactly what went on are like, what are you doing? Why are you staying? And, I think in the past that would really bother me more than it does right now. Because I know my brain and I know that I can go tomorrow if I need to.
I think
I'll
that's
pick
real
up and
growth.
leave everything.
I think that's real growth on your part. I really do, Sarah, because you're not placing stock in other people's opinion. You're trusting yourself. You're trusting you are being strong enough to create your own future and to recognize that you have choices and those choices are not being influenced by other people's opinions. And that comes from a very deep place of strength. And I think it's fabulous. I'm really proud of you. Let me ask you a question. What do you think what did the program do for you? What did the LOA program, how did that help you in your recovery?
I think for sure the more positive vibe was what I was craving. I had gone to Nar-Anon and Al-Anon meetings in the past, and I think Nar-Anon was hard for me because, it was mostly mothers. It was mostly mothers, and I had several of the mothers go, well, you are just so much luckier than I am. I can't walk away from my son, but you can just get divorced, as though it's that simple, as though it's, there's not 8 million other things tied up, not to mention, Christmases with grandchildren that have been in your mind since you met the guy. Finances and family and all of those things, and to say, well, you can just walk away. And I think for me, the language of the program, when I was considering jumping in with both feet, that really got me was, whether you choose to stay or choose to go, there's this community that will support you. Oh, okay, well, that sounds good. I like that idea. But the boundaries, that was because when he was on harder drugs, and I knew he was on harder drugs, he was either sleeping or not necessarily unpleasant. But the alcohol mixed with anti-anxiety meds, benzodiazepines, was just more than I could bear. He was mean and he was angry, and I had never dealt really with that before. That was new. And I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to deal with that. And I needed something, and I wasn't ready to jump back into Al-Anon or Nar-Anon or any of those things, because I had a bad experience in the past, a couple bad experiences in the past, and I just couldn't bring myself to go back in a room and possibly be told, well, good, just leave him, good. That, you're lucky. I just couldn't bring myself to do that. And so I work at home, and so when he got mean, I would engage. When he got mean, I would engage. And then through the program, I was like, you know what? If I don't like what you're saying, I'm going to walk away, because I don't need this. And there were many times that I drove away. I got in my car and I drove away, or I went in the back bedroom. That never worked. He came in, so then I would grab my keys and I would drive away. I would make something work.
Yay!
Something work.
So
I mean, there
That's
were,
awesome.
of course, times when I couldn't get out. Like, he would, stand in front of the car, and of course I'm not going to run him over, even though the anger was like, maybe I should run him over. But, he would like jump in the car with me, and, like just really ridiculous things. And, it was all a not a game, but a strategy. How am I going to get out and just go? Like, how am I going to work this so that I can go? Because I need to go. And so the walking away, and, in his sober moments, I, full disclosure with him when he was sober. I am in this program. I am working it, and I'm not going to take your crap. I'm not going to do it. And it got worse. The crap got so much worse when I got in the program, because it was threatening his ability to use.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so for me, that was, oh my God, maybe I'm doing this wrong because it's getting worse and it's every day now and it's this and it's that. And then after about a month of me just not engaging and walking away and a few slip-ups here and there where I did engage and then went, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. I should have done that. You're not working your program. I would press the reset button and go, but I can today, and today I'm going to start again. I would leave and he would call and apologize, or he would go, I'm not going to argue with you anymore, or, and normally it would just be a voicemail or a text message or whatever because he knew I wasn't going to answer my phone. And it gradually was getting better over time, and then the DUI happened. Then he said, let's do the breathalyzer, and we got the breathalyzer, and I was like, what, I'm not going to do this every day. I'm going to breathalyze you when I think I need to. And, for my own sanity, this has nothing to do with you, but if I'm going to be sleeping, I need to know that I need to have an ear open if I think you're drunk. So.
Right. Well, you know what you were doing, which was perfect, Sarah, is you were retraining him how to teach you, and you were retraining him on his expectations. See, before all that time, he would bait you with his bad behavior, and you would fall for it because you didn't know any different. And then it would create this big, scene or not. But when you're right, as soon as you started working the program, all of a sudden addiction became threatened, and it was like, wait a second, I'm used to controlling you. I'm used to being able to bait you, and this is how you react. I rely on that. Why isn't that working anymore? So then addiction tries to do all these other different tactics. It tries this, and it tries standing in front of your car, it tries getting in your car, it tries, threatening, it tries everything. And what I love what you said was you just remained consistent. You stayed in your own lane, you kept your own head down, you remained focused, you forgave yourself when you slipped up, and the consistency is what's key.
And it's absolutely
by doing that, you retrain him. You retrain him to go, okay, I know I can't get away with that anymore. Like, I know that that's not going to work with her anymore.
And, as far as the program, there's so many things. I mean, I opened I'm doing a Rodan and Fields business, and I'm considering moving closer to family, and I'm, those sorts of things that I'm trying to adjust so that I feel safe for the what ifs. Because I don't want to feel unsafe. And I don't want to feel like I have no choice but to leave all of my belongings and rip my kids out of school again. I don't want to feel like that. And so, I'm trying to set us up for financial security and support, emotional support, and having family around, because right now we have none. And so, for me, there were just so many things, and the biggest thing is he's sober, which is great, but 4 years ago when he went to rehab, my husband and I are both musicians, and 4 years ago we were playing gigs all the time and making a lot of money and doing, just having so much fun, but his addiction was getting out of control. And, I saw, differences in the way that the people that we would, go and who would pay our, who would pay us were looking at us a little differently, because he was not as on and would take a little longer breaks to have an extra glass of wine or whatever it was. And I just was just devastated, because music is my life. I love music. I love singing. He and I play music together and are pretty good, I think. And so I had a real hard time playing music with him after that. And even after he came home from rehab and I've stopped that. And so now I'm just now getting back into it. And I mean, I always sang when I was by myself, but that connection is tentatively coming back, and that was, I missed it. That was something that I missed terribly, and I think probably the music that he and I make together is the biggest reason that I stayed as long as I have through everything, is that we really do make good music together, and that fuels my soul and keeps me going day to day. And so for the last 4 years, I haven't really been doing that because I didn't trust that he was going to do what he needed to do.
Right.
So,
well,
and that was
I
big
think
for me.
Big, huge, amazing progress for you. I know for a fact there are some women that I talk to where I go, oh gosh, you know what? We need more work. We need more time. We need to focus on this and readdress that. And I worry about them still. And then there are some women that I talk to where I hang up the phone or I finish a conversation and I go, I'm absolutely 100% certain that her future, no matter what it looks like, staying, leaving, back and forth, doesn't matter. She is going to have a glorious, wonderful future. And you are one of those women that I feel like, I don't worry about you. I'm not worried about you at all, no matter what you decide to do, because you are willing to do the work. I can point out 4 different times during this conversation at least where I've heard you go, I'm doing this so that I'm preparing myself. And I'm doing this because I'm making sure that I'm not stuck in this situation. Or I'm doing this because, and the doing is the action and the discipline and the work. And you're working. And that's why I'm not worried, because the commitment to yourself and your healing and your children is massive. And I know that you're going to do great. I know you are. I know this is the beginning of a new way of life for you. And I know if your husband stays sober, which we all hope he does, you're going to be okay. And if he starts drinking, which we all hope he doesn't, you're actually going to be okay. And and so are your kids. And so I'm really, really proud. And I'm so grateful that you shared. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's going to inspire many, many women.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate your program, and I've referred many people to it. So
thank you. That makes me feel so good.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with Michelle's personal thoughts and beliefs. From one woman to another, bonded together by the fact we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.